Calling Vegas was this weekend, along with the Uprising world premiere. Let's talk about it. Hi friends, welcome back to Nearly Same Games. I'm Neil, and this is the Calling Vegas report. Now this weekend was the big event in Las Vegas with the Calling as well as the Uprising world premiere. So let's take a look at some of that. On Friday, we had the Uprising world premiere event with over 700 participants. I thought these numbers were great, considering that we just got done with the Pro Tour in New Jersey. In general, it went pretty well with the event itself. I think a lot of people were excited to see all of the marvels and the cold foils that were available. A few fables were pulled, and in general, that had a lot of excitement for people. I think a lot of people had fun with the event, and we're going to go into a little bit more about the heroes and Uprising in general in a little bit here. On Sunday, there was also a Uprising draft that we had a lot of people involved with. I believe we had over 300 people involved in that draft. And this was a structured as a tournament draft, which, if you are more familiar with casual drafts, the structure is much more rigid. And if you have a Road to Nationals that has this draft, let me talk about a few things that happen with that. First off, they will announce when you open each pack, and in the draft, there are 2 slots for tokens or your cold foiled card. They will appear in the back of the pack. Those 2 cards are not allowed in your deck. This includes the cold foil. If you happen to open a cold foil, that is not allowed in a draft deck. It is in sealed, but not in draft. So first thing is, you'll take out those 2 cards from your pack. You will then face down count your pack, and you should have 14 cards in your pack. If you do not have 14 cards in your pack, you'll need to ask for a judge. This is slow and annoying. And the other thing that will happen is, if you have one of the dragons, you will need to reveal that dragon to everyone in your pod so that they see that you have one of those dragons and which dragon it is. It's strange. If you're used to more casual drafting, you open up your pack, you look at your cards, and you just start deciding what you want, and then you pass it along. This is much more structured, and you first count out your cards face down. You do not look at them. You reveal any dragons that you may have, and then you go through and they will tell you to pick up your cards and figure out which one you want to draft. Then you are supposed to, they will announce draft, and that is when you're supposed to take your card and put it into your pile. And at that point, you will count out the rest of the cards in as you pass them to the next pile. I would do a stack of 4 and a stack of 4 and a stack of 4 and any extras, so you could easily see how many cards you had available. And then they will tell you to count the cards while they're face down, and then they'll tell you when you can pick them up. Be kind to the person next to you, and try to make when you're fanning out your cards, make them in a clean stack that's easy to pick up. I found that a lot of times there's just kind of a pile there, and I'm scrambling to kind of pick up the cards. You don't have that much time to make your decision. So if I'm spending all of my time trying to pick up the cards from that pile, that's cutting into the time I have to look at those cards, evaluate before I pass. And you'll do this for each of the cards that you draft out of that pack. It takes, for me, it takes a little bit of the fun out of the draft and being able to have time to read all the cards. You should, if you're planning on going to one of these professional level drafts, I believe the Road to Nationals, if you're involved with that in a draft, will be a similar format. You should make sure you familiarize yourself with all the cards beforehand so you have an idea of kind of what you want to pick and are able to easily identify the cards that you have so that you can make a quick decision and move on to the next set. But overall, I think that the draft went well, despite all of that, and it was a good time, pretty much had by all. Now for the calling itself, it was a team blitz event, and each team had 3 participants. Each participant had to have a different hero that they were on, so that your team couldn't be a 3 Kano team. And you would also have to pick a seat before you started the event. So when we got to the event, we had to sit in our assigned seats, and we were all issued a wristband, depending on which seat you are, if you're A, B, or C. And you would be matched up to the other person on the other person's team in the same seat. So that went pretty well. My team didn't do very well. I was playing Icelander for that. I won 2 of my matches, and I lost 2 of my matches. As a team, we only won 1 of our matches, and then we lost 3 and dropped. So not the great. One thing that did come up is I believe 2 teams were disqualified because their Kano player had an Eye of Ophidia in there, and the judges determined that the Eye of Ophidia was curled and could be picked out in the deck. And this is the same as marking the card. I believe both teams had advanced pretty far in the tournament when this disqualification happened, and that is very frustrating. So I would recommend either running all foil cards or no foil cards. And the way that you would need to do that with the Eye of Ophidia is as soon as you get to the event, go talk to the head judge and say that you have an Eye of Ophidia and that you would like a proxy for it, because it would be curled in your deck. And I believe the head judge needs to decide whether or not they will allow a proxy for that card for you to use. So that's a little bit upsetting with that regard, but overall I think it was an interesting event. We had, I think, somewhere around 60 tables of teams, which means we had around 120 teams playing in that event, which is 360 players. That's a pretty big team event, and I would say that went pretty well overall. So big question is, how did Uprising do, and how are each of the heroes? I think it is, the heroes themselves are interesting. I think I certainly faced off against more Phais than anything. I think Phi is the easy deck to build. I'd probably compare Phi more to Briar in that you can kind of shuffle up all of his cards and probably have a pretty decent deck without too much thought. And piloting him is in the way to get across a lot of damage is pretty easy. You just throw a bunch of red cards at your opponent's face and a lot of damage gets across. The nuance becomes, when do you block, how much do you block, and how do you still keep the pressure on? And that's kind of where the decisions may come from with Phi. On the opposite end, I think Icelander is probably the most difficult to build and play. I think that I would compare her to Lexi in the sealed pool, that you really need to luck out with the right cards to play, and a little bit easier in draft to play, but still a complicated hero, and it's going to be difficult. Dromai, on the other hand, I didn't see a lot of her in the sealed events. She can be deadly in draft. Sealed, again, is going to depend on which cards you get, and I think you need those good red go again cards, so then you can play those, pitch a red to play them, or if they're 0 cost, just play them. That gives all your dragons go again, and then all the things that create those ash wings and get a lot of those to go kind of wide, a lot like Prism would with her spectral shields. That's kind of the way you kind of build up with her. So let's take a more in-depth look at Uprising and see some of the cards, and we'll start with taking a look at the generic cards that are available to you.
Let's talk about some generics in Uprising. First off, we'll start off with Helios Miter. This lets you pay 2 and prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to your hero. And this is an instant. And this can be important to remember if you end up against Dromai's dragon that can prevent you from taking actions on their turn. You can stack up a bunch of those as soon as the dragon's cast, and then block out whatever you can, and then maybe prevent some of those ping damage from the little ash wings at the end. We have Quell. I believe there's a few pieces of equipment that use Quell. These are generic legs that have Quell. A few things to remember about Quell. You can pay 1 to prevent 1 damage from a source. You can't pay more than once for the same source, but you can pay for multiple sources on the same turn. So if Fi is coming at you with multiple attacks, you can say, I'm going to use the slippers to quell 1, and the next attack I'll quell 1, next attack I'll quell 1, next attack I'll quell 1. So you can pitch a blue and prevent 3 damage from various sources. These will be destroyed at the end of the turn once you start using them, but you can use them throughout that turn. Sigil of Protection. These are pretty nice because you can drop these on your turn and have the ability to block any kind of damage. This includes arcane damage. The disadvantage of these are that they don't have go again, and your opponent knows what you're doing there. So they can send in a weak attack into this. It blocks up to 4. If they send in a 1 power attack, this is kind of wasted, but at the same time, especially if you're playing against Icelander, who's got big arcane damage that they could do, this can prevent some of that. Brothers in Arms, important because this is a 6 power attack and it's generic. If you see these, you probably want to pick up 1 or 2 of these in case you come across a Dromai. Being able to pop that Phantasm is still relevant. The ability is not bad either. You can block with it and pay 1 to bump this up to a 4 block. And if you're pitch a blue, you can also potentially use Quell to take off an additional point. And then Healing Balm. Again, there is Arcane Barrier. There are ways to prevent arcane damage, but it's somewhat limited, and especially with these go wide decks, this is good to be able to just drop it and gain 3 life. It's a good card to have, but remember, this does not have go again. This is not an instant. This is not a sigil. So all important things to remember, but you can end your combat chain with gaining 3 life. All right, take a look at Fi. Fi, you may start the game with a Phoenix Flame in your graveyard. Phoenix Flame is this. If you control 2 or more Draconic Chain Links, Phoenix Flame has +1. It's a 0 cost, 0 attack action that has go again. You get to have 3 of these, yes, 3 of these in your Blitz deck. And with Fi, you can start with 1 in your graveyard. We'll get that back real quick. Especially with his ability, which costs 3, return a Phoenix Flame from your graveyard to your hand. This ability costs 1 less for each Draconic Chain you control. Fi is very much a go wide character, and wants to play a lot of attacks each turn. And this could be 5 or 6 different attacks that are coming across to your player and difficult to block. His weapon is Searing Emberblade. Once per turn attack action, pay 2 in attack, and if you control 2 or more Draconic Chain Links, Searing Emberblade has go again. Now that's 2 or more. This is a Draconic action, so this also counts as a Draconic Chain Link. So you could potentially pay for Phoenix Flame for 0, and then swing this, and this will have go again because this is the second attack, Draconic attack. Very powerful. Very much you're going to have this in the middle of a lot of your attacks. Let's take a look at his equipment. Heat Wave, Draconic Ninja equipment. Destroy it, and your Phoenix Flames you control have +1 this turn. This means that most of your Phoenix Flames will come across for 2. Very powerful. Remember, this is an instant, so you can attack with your Phoenix Flame, and after blocks, pop it to pump it up. Very good. It also has Quell 1. You generally don't want to use Quell on this unless you're planning to destroy it this turn and you were preventing something like an Icelander attack. You can prevent the 1 damage from that and then pop it to boost up your Phoenix Flames. Tide Flippers, you can destroy it and target attack action with 2 or less base attack, gains go again, pretty good. And Arcane Barrier 1. LSS has decided to give us some Arcane Barrier with this set because we have a wizard in the set, and both the Draconic heroes have Arcane Barrier available at common. So if you see these, you probably want to make sure you pick them up. It's going to be very important in the wizard match. Speaking about Wizard is a pretty strong counter to this deck. You're going to want to make sure that you still have some blue cards in this deck. You can kind of go red line with this and run almost all red cards and try to pump out a lot of power. But if you do that, you're going to run across a wizard that's going to be able to give you a bunch of frostbites. And if you can't pay for those, then your turn is over, and you don't want that to happen. So you want to at least have some blue cards in your pool to at least side in if you're going to play against Icelander. Speaking about your red cards, 3 Phoenix Flames. These come back a lot. It's not unusual in a game to be able to get 3 of these on the board at the same time. But you will often be using these and then constantly recurring them. Almost every turn you should be able to get your Phoenix Flame back from your graveyard and swing it again. That's how wide this deck goes. What you're going to be looking for to start with are these Go Again cards. And watch out for the cost here. Some of these cost 1. You're going to need to pay attention to that. But cards that have abilities on them, that have Go Again, just anything that has Go Again, because you're going to need to start the combat chain with a red card and something that has Go Again. And this is so you can get to these other cards that say, if you played another red card this turn, this has Go Again. If you have 2 or more Draconic Chains, this has Go Again. These, this is just a Go Again card. These are important to Draconic Chain Links. This has Go Again. You really want to keep that up because you want to get to your 4th chain to hit these Rupture cards. And the Rupture cards have additional abilities if they're Chain Link 4 or higher. So, general playstyle for Phi is just drop a bunch of attacks, get your Searing Emberblade in there. You want to get up to the 3 chain links if possible. If you only get 2, you may pitch 1 and get your Phoenix Flame back. Play that for an extra point of damage. This is an instant, so it doesn't break the chain link. And that's generally how you want all of this to go. I like to include some potentially bigger attacks, either generic or if I get some of the, there's a majestic, talk about later, something that you can have two resources available to you and potentially swap it in when they're expecting this 3-power attack, you throw out a 6-power attack. So you can have a little bit of shenanigans with that. But again, you're going to want to have that blue to pay for those 1-cost cards and be able to swing your sword, and then have the other pieces of your chain link. He's very strong. This is going to be the easiest hero to play. Most likely, this will be the best deck to build in sealed. This is kind of like the Briar. You can kind of take all the red cards and shuffle them up and have a pretty decent deck. You're probably looking to have between 25 and 33% blue cards to be able to fuel all this. But after that, everything's going to be red. And there's going to be a lot of reds to choose from. When you open up your pack, you're going to see just a ton of reds in those packs in general. All right, let's have a look at Dromai. Dromai is kind of Dragon Mom here. And her ability is whenever you pitch a red card, create an ash token. And the ash token is just a material. It doesn't do anything on its own, but we'll transform that later with other cards. And if you've played a red card this turn, dragons you control have go again while attacking. That is a very powerful effect, and this will kind of create a little bit of that prism, ping you to death with 1,000 little cuts. And we'll get to that in a minute. And her weapon, the only thing it does is let your dragons attack. But it costs 0, which is going to get pretty silly here. And let's take a look at her equipment. Silken Form. Destroy this, and target ash you control gets turned into an Aether Ashwing. And the Aether Ashwing is on the back of the ash and it's a little 1/1 dragon and has Arcane Barrier 1. So again, this has Phantasm, so if you block this with a 6-power attack, it goes away. Your attacks no longer have you lose the go again because the attack vanishes. Another thing to note that when you attack with these, Icelander has instant speed, attack any target thing abilities. So if you're attacking and Icelander kills one of these, that will also end the chain, and you will not get your action point to play again. So if you have 5 of these sitting out there and you attack with the first one, Icelander destroys that one. It's like popping the Phantasm. The dragon is dead. There is no go again. So, but the idea will be to kind of build up a lot of these and have that little kind of ping to death kind of thing that that Prism does. Again, you need to make sure that you have played a red card this turn, and then you can attack with all of these with go again. So you can destroy this and get one of those for free. The important thing is that this has Quell, and you can quell several attacks, and before the end of your turn, you can pop this and turn one of your ash into a little dragon. So you get kind of dual use out of this, which is pretty good. All right, her feet are Silent Stilettos. Whenever an attacking ally you control dies or an attack action card you control is destroyed by Phantasm, you may pay 3. If you do, destroy Silent Stilettos and gain 1 action point. So you can pitch a blue and continue attacking. Not as good as Footsteps, but it's something. The important thing, it also has Arcane Barrier 1. So these are great to have when you run across the Icelander matches. You can at least be blocking out the 1. And we'll talk about some Icelander matches in a minute here. So the general play pattern you want to do with Dromai is play one of her attacks, preferably a 1 cost, because then you can pitch a red. And ideally, it would be a red pitch card that you are using that has go again. And that can basically start your attacks and keep them going. Also remember that you can include Phoenix Flames in here. You can use those. They are red pitch. They cost nothing, so you can potentially just kind of start your combo with that if you want to. They're going to have 0 power. Not that great, but you can include those if you want to, if you can't find enough of these red pitch go again cards. But if you pitch a red pitch, then you'll get an Ash token, an attack, and then be able to attack with all your dragons with go again. So there's a few cards that will either give you an Ash or transform an Ash into an Ashwing, and these are pretty good. And then we have some Phantasm attacks that have go again, and they can have benefits if they are destroyed. And these are also great. You can finish off your segment with a big Phantasm attack, or just maybe that's just your attack for the turn. All of these are pretty good. There's not a lot of cards in this set that can break Phantasm, so these are easy to bring along in sealed or draft events. Then we have Sand Cover. This is one of the best cards that I think Dromai has. This will allow you to give target Ash Ward 4, which means that when you take damage, you can prevent 4 of it. This is an instant, and that is important. So when an attack comes in, you can basically block 4. This is a Sink Below for you, or a Fate Foreseen. And it is very important because this can also block arcane damage. So if you are fighting up against an Icelander attacks on their turn with arcane damage 5, you can Sand Cover, turn an Ash into a Ward 4, and be able to block 4 of that. This is any source. This doesn't have to be physical damage. So very good. And then there's dragons. These are all invoke and on one side and then play on the other. These are all going to be pretty good. They all have extra abilities for you to use, but these are rare. I believe in my draft pod we saw maybe 3 or 4 of these. So if you're fighting over these, that's not going to go well for you. But these are probably all pretty good to have, and will really put on the pressure late game. With the ability to use the ward, Dromai is a pretty tough target against Icelander. That she can, if she's got a lot of sand cover, she's going to have plenty of time to build up the Ash Wings and do a lot of damage and put on a lot of pressure. I think she's going to be weak to Fi because Fi is going to be able to put on a lot of pressure very early on and really kind of put Dromai in a bad spot and not have enough time to build up the Ash Wings and be able to deal with this. Also note that the Ash Wings, these are not Spectra, so they will not end a combat chain if they are destroyed. So somebody like Fi can come in and pop several of the Ash Wings and still be able to continue attacking. So That's something to keep in mind, that Phi is probably going to be your bad match, and you probably have a pretty good match against Icelander. And it's going to take time to build up your board state, much like Prism. So you're going to be kind of a little bit defensive maybe in the early game, but even so, some of these big Phantasm attacks can really keep pressure on with not a lot of cards. So that's kind of the play style of Dromai. All right, let's take a look at Icelander. Probably already know what Icelander does, but she has Essence of Ice. And when it's not your turn, you may play blue non-attack action cards from your arsenal as though they were instant. And whenever you play an ice card during an opponent's turn, create a frostbite token under their control. She does have a little bit less health than the other heroes because she's a wizard, and wizards have less health. But this is going to be a much more controlling play style than the other heroes. Now her weapon is the Waning Moon, once per turn instant. Note that it's an instant, that's important. Pay 2, deal 2 arcane damage to the hero, and if it's not your turn, instead deal 3 damage to the hero. Activate this ability only if you've played non-attack action card this turn. And that's going to be kind of a little bit of a gotcha for you. And if you end up with 1 card in your hand, or 2 cards in your hand, it's going to be really a lot more difficult to actually activate this. And for her equipment, Glacial Horns, destroy Glacial Horns, choose a hero, frees up to 1 card in their arsenal, and 1 ally they control until the start of their next turn. Go again. This has kind of a meh effect. If it's against Dromai, they have a big dragon on the board. Being able to freeze the dragon might be important, but arsenal cards are kind of iffy in kind of limited formats. And her arms are destroy Conduit of Frostburn. The next card you play this turn with an effect that deals arcane damage gains. When this deals arcane damage to a hero, destroy a frozen card in their arsenal. So you can kind of combine these. And note that this is an instant, so you can send over the arcane damage. But this is the next card that you play this turn. So you have to do this before you actually play the card that's going to do the arcane damage. So if they're able to prevent that damage, you'll destroy this, and this will do nothing. So it's a little bit of a not great. The idea is that you can pop this, and then blow up their arsenal. 2 cards plus the arcane to blow up their arsenal. Not the great, but this also has Quell 1. That's generally what I use that for in my games. Now the playstyle for Icelander, you may think, well, I want all the blue cards and I want to put them in my arsenal and play it on their turn and give them the frostbites. Sort of. The problem that you're going to find is you're not going to get all of the blue ice cards that you want. You're going to get some elemental wizard cards that aren't ice, so they don't count as that. And some of them might be nice to play on your opponent's turn, but you're just not going to get the threshold that you want. So what you're going to end up with are a lot of red and yellow cards that you're going to be able to play, and you're going to want to play them on your turn. And the general style that you're going to want to do that is you're going to want to play a card dealing arcane damage, and then using your Waning Moon to do 2 more arcane damage, or you moon them for 2, as people are saying. So things that are really do well are things that cost 0, that you can use your other card to pitch for, or potentially have 1 cost cards that you can pitch a blue, do this attack, and then moon them for 2. There are also some nice disruption cards. So if Aether Ice Vein deals damage and it was fused, they have to discard a card unless they pay 1. Again, you're going to need those ice cards to fuse these, and you're going to find these ice cards are hard to find. There's not necessarily, if you have multiple people competing for Icelander in your pod, these are going to go kind of quick. They don't. You're going to notice that some packs have very little wizard cards at all, much less ice cards, and so you're going to have to kind of see what you get, and your sealed pool is probably going to be pretty light. But this card is very effective if you do get it and you are able to fuse it. The nice thing would be is if you're able to pitch a blue, play this, fuse it with a blue ice card, and then arsenal that blue ice card for an attack on their turn. Singe is an excellent card, especially the red one, against Dromai. Being able to burn away 3 of their little baby dragons is a very good ability to have. And then you have cards like this that you can just play and give your opponent a bunch of frostbites for 0, which is pretty great. Another thing to keep an eye out for are generic blues. This deck likes to have a lot of blues. I would say if you could get half blues in your deck, you're doing really well. You're probably not going to get it. You're probably going to get 10 to 12 blues in your deck, and you might be able to do okay with that. Here's a cute little interaction that I discovered is that these are going to be rares, but still. This card says, next time you ice fuse this turn, create 4 frostbite tokens under their control. And if you have an ice card and you can use Ice Eternal, you can pitch a blue, play this for 1, play Ice Eternal. Ice Eternal says that ice fused, create X frostbite tokens under their control. Then if Ice Eternal was fused, deal arcane damage to that hero equal to the number of frostbite tokens they control. So if you did something like pitch a blue, play this for 1, play Ice Eternal for 2, and fuse it, you are creating 4 frostbite tokens from this, an additional 1 from that, and you're doing 5 arcane damage with 5 frostbites. That's pretty powerful. This deck is kind of the counter to Phi, and all of these together, I think, make a very interesting dynamic. Icelander is counter to Phi. Phi is kind of the counter to Dromai, and Dromai with the ward cards are able to effectively counter Icelander. So you're going to want to pay attention. You're going to want to look for sideboard cards as well. You're going to want to see if you can't get those 6 power generic cards in order to pop some of those phantasms, and try to have a couple of these Singe cards for that Dromai matchup. Being able to create frostbite tokens against Phi, especially if they're not ready for it, if they didn't bring in all the blues, if they just went red line, will be pretty effective at shutting them down. But if your Phi player is smart, they will have a good number of blues to be able to kind of counteract that. And your damage output is going to be low. Playing Icelander, I have found, can be difficult to kind of close out games. If you have an off turn that you're not giving them frostbites, if you're not slowing them down enough, if they still get some big plays out, it's difficult to block, and it's easy to fall behind. And once you're behind, you can't really catch back up. But that is Icelander.
All right, so those are all the heroes from Uprising. A little while to explain all of that. Let's kind of end this with taking a look at some of the goodies I got and some of the better cards I picked up through these events.
All right, let's take a look at some of the sweet cards I got in Vegas. First off, Helios Miter is a special rainbow foil promo version of this card. This card's normally just a token, but kind of cool to have a shiny foil version. Also, we got a full art Phoenix Flame Rainbow Foil, which is also pretty neat. Also normally just a token, but kind of a neat card to have. Take a look at some of the Majestics that I pulled. I got a Thaw. This is a Draconic action, and I think this would be a good card to have in both Phi and Dromai. It kind of negates some of the Icelander abilities, and is a 6 power for 2. This is good to have against a Dromai to be able to pop a Phantasm. And this is real nice in Phi. This is where I ran this one. When you're doing your attacks, you can float 2 resources and suggest that you are going to swing your sword for 3 and then actually pop over for 6. And people don't like it when you do that, but it's a nice little bluff for you. Tome of Duplicity. This is the wizard action that lets you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, banish 1. If it's a non-attack action card, then you may play it this turn as though it were an instant. At first I was thinking this would be fun for Kano. This is just a wizard action, so he could potentially run it. But then I thought, if I have 2 blue pitch cards, why wouldn't I just pitch both of them? It costs 3. I feel like this really should cost 2 to make it effective in this. So what this actually is a way for Icelander to kind of play a little bit like Kano. You can put this in your arsenal and be able to pitch for 3, look at the top 2, maybe find Emeritus Scolding, probably would be my guess. But you can kind of pretend like you're Kano. Not as efficient as Kano, but still can do some work. And then Phoenix Form, just a general good 0 cost attack. 0 for 3, 3 block. If you have several Phoenix Flames, then this gets better the more that you have with it. If you manage to get 3, then you can draw 3 cards, which is crazy, but it also has to hit. But if you've played 3 Phoenix Flames, there's a good chance that your opponent has already blocked out. So those cards are the Majestics that I pulled. I also did pull 1 legendary, the Flamescale Furnace. This was in my sealed pool and was effective. It's 2 block with temper. So what this is in my sealed pool was essentially block and block twice. The ability is a little bit wacky to try to get pulled off. It costs 1, and you gain 1 for each red pitch in your pitch zone. So if you've pitched 1 already, you can pitch a red and get 2 resources. I think getting 3 or 4 would be more difficult. My guess is this is a nice finisher if you have already played several cards and you are you have just red pitch is what you pulled. You can get a Phoenix Flame back from the graveyard, and these are red pitch, so you could pitch that and potentially get 2 resources and play your last 2 cost attack instead of playing just a 0 cost attack, and potentially getting more value out of that. So maybe you have a Thaw in hand, you bring back a Phoenix Flame and pitch that, and then you're able to play the Thaw for 6, or you're able to swing the sword, where instances where you would not be able to. I think it's situational. I don't think that this is going to be every turn I'm going to use that, but potentially good in those to kind of offset those all red hands. I also had the opportunity to meet Steve Argyle and have him sign some cards. These are the Mythic signatures, and he charges $10 a piece to do these, but these are fantastic. And these are his actual signature. What he does is he signs them in black and then signs the shadow or signs over them in a different kind of marker and puts this through a heat machine to actually get this cool foiling on it. So this is not just a stamp, this is his actual signature, and it's a really awesome treatment. And I think these cards are amazing.
And that's it. A bit of a longer video today, but tell me what you think in the comments below. Which hero do you think you like, and which ones do you think you'd like to play? Were you at the calling? Did you get to play? What do you think of the heroes and how they played in the sealed and draft environments? Until next time, I'm Neil, and you've been watching the Calling Vegas Report.